Hello everyone, Rich Carlton, and welcome to another awesome day. We are here doing all sorts of awesome stuff. There's Miles Debsky, who's here helping us with the broadcast day. I'm actually not even supposed to be here, but I actually am here only by a freak accident of nature. And so Miles is here. I'm surprised you're still here, Miles. Did Christian decide he wasn't going to make it today?
I'm still air traffic controlling.
Air traffic controlling on that? Okay, yeah. So I don't know what's going on with Christian. Primarily, it's a conversation today. It's a very exciting one. We're going to be going through, frankly, some of the README stuff on the new release of FileMaker Pro. Along the way, we can talk about any README materials that are current on the latest release of Server. So I think mostly today is a pro day, but we probably will end up we always seem to cover all sorts of things, so I'm not really limiting myself to one specific area. So I am here today. I will also be here tomorrow. So we will be broadcasting pretty much every day. And so we originally announced that we were going to cancel tomorrow, but given the mayhem that's going on in my life with the medical stuff, there's nothing wrong with me. They just have to do paperwork and it's all screwed up. So and so until the paperwork gets straightened out, my schedule is somewhat blown. So Miles is there. It's pretty awesome. Welcome. I'm going to minimize my Slack because we don't need to have that going through screen. So we have Jacob Taylor here, who is basically the Director of Information Services. Basically, that's not a really good title for Jacob. Basically, Jacob is more, I would say, the Director of FileMaker Server Infrastructure would be a better term. He's the Chief FileMaker Server Infrastructure Architect, really, because when you say you're Chief of Information Services, but there's only like 3 people in that department, that means that you run around and put toner cartridges and printers and I'm pretty sure Jacob doesn't do that. So whenever he says he's the head of IT, he doesn't really realize that comes with a lot of jobs. So he's really like a server architect god, right? Would be better. Server architect god. Director of godly activities at servers. Let me do a little bit of low-hanging activity up front. So on the upcoming broadcast schedule, if you go to fmtrain.tv, where we broadcast every day for an hour about the FileMaker platform. And we're talking about all sorts of very exciting things. And so it's every day we do this, Monday through Friday, 1 o'clock Pacific time. I know for some of you it's the middle of the night. I can't really help that. It is a round planet, although some of us think it's still flat, in which case we should all be in the same time zone, which would be really awesome. So, but the planet's not flat. It does cause timing issues. Upcoming broadcast schedule. Today is on 19.2.2.234. Next week, I will be gone Wednesday, but the in-flight entertainment is already scheduled. Nick Hunter will be starting reporting on Monday the 5th, Tuesday the 6th, Wednesday the 7th. Then Jacob Taylor will be doing theoretically a very basic walkthrough of submitting records to the FileMaker Data API. The idea of submitting a record, maybe retrieving a record, very, very, very basic. So it's as far as we can get. This is not WebDirect. This is for custom web publishing, basically publishing HTML pages with dynamic FileMaker content. In the old days, this was called loosely custom web publishing, CDML, PHP. Those are all slightly different versions of the same kind of concept where you're using code to talk to FileMaker through FileMaker Server and to retrieve that back. Does that make sense? So Jacob will be doing a 1-hour ultra basic conversation about that. Then on Friday next week, Jacob will come back and talk about FileMaker container backup optimization. You can speed your backups if you have a lot of containers by some fairly clever configuration of your FileMaker server. Very, very cool. If you're using FileMaker Cloud, it's not something you can mess with, but for FileMaker Server, it's definitely a thing. So that is the upcoming schedule there. As a reminder for 2 things. One, if you want to support the channel, definitely make sure you buy the FileMaker Bundle training. So this is free training. There's also an upgraded training above this, which is even much better. And that is anywhere from $300 a year to about $200 a year, depending upon what you're looking for. But it's like 90 to 100 hours of FileMaker training. It's really quite good. Where this is kind of ad hoc, kind of a conversation, and people are asking questions and conversations happening. That is more of a coordinated, coherent, very specific conversation, 10, 15-minute videos that are animated. See, we can't really animate. The only animation here is my hands and Clarice, the licensing representative, if you have Clarice questions. So that's the limit of our animation, right? The other videos we animate. That's why you pay for that. It's really good stuff. Additionally, if you're interested in checking out a special training event, FM dash Neumorphism right here is a special event. It's for internal RCC staff. No one else can come unless you actually write a check and you want to attend this. This is special design stuff to continue the neomorphism conversation we had from about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. It's specifically step-by-step, exact script steps to implement this design style. It's a design philosophy, design style. It's what's currently being used by Apple, Facebook, pretty much everyone. Cool. Jacob Taylor, are you ready to talk with us about the new amazing stuff?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so do you have the README up on your screen? If you don't, you probably should have it, right?
I do actually, yeah. Would you want me to
why don't we jump to your
to...
screen? So yeah, let's jump to your screen because we're going to go through this because it's an interesting conversation. It's a really, really interesting conversation. And I do want to bring up something real quick. So Claris keeps kicking the can down the road on meetings they're supposed to have with us. And so Claris is getting to like this decision point where they have to, and Christian Schmidt from Monkey Bread just kind of kicked this over the fence. I am very aware of it because of all the broadcasts and training I have to do. But the reality is that Claris has this issue where every year, every 12 months in May, they would release a new version. And they changed the major revision number. So if you're looking at Jacob's screen here, every May they change that number right there. So it's 17, then 18, then 19. And so then Claris went to this. We're going to update major updates as short as 2 to 3 weeks. We've seen it that short. And as far as like 3 or 4 months is their longest stretch. So this is agile development where they're building new things. So this is the latest release, what we're talking about today. However, we're coming up upon May, and it's kind of a problem because if you buy an annual subscription, like a subscription of FileMaker, it doesn't matter what they call it. You're legally licensed to use it. It could call it 58.1, or they could call it 19.3 or 19.4. You don't care because you're legal. If you bought a perpetual license and your maintenance has run out, if Claris keeps calling it 19.2 and then 3, then 4, then you get free updates. And Claris doesn't want to give you free updates unless you're paying for it. Does that make sense? So when you typically buy a perpetual license, you get 1 year of maintenance. So if it's been more than a year, say like you bought FileMaker 18 perpetual, 18 months ago, and you got the free upgrade to 19, then as long as they keep calling it 19, they keep doing updates, it keeps working for you. It always would work, but you would get the free updates, the latest version. So in order for them to encourage people to buy the new version, they have to change the name. And so theoretically that might happen in May. There's been zero communication to the consultants on this that I'm aware of. I think they're like they're like a rubber band that's pulled really tight. They don't have a lot of spare cycles to do anything when they're pulled that tight, very stretched out. So Kyle, of course, is voting that I hope they call it, they jumped to 20, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to even engage in speculation, but you could change the name of the product. You could say it's not FileMaker anymore. I mean, Claris a bunch of the senior developers got together and said, get rid of the word FileMaker because no one appreciates the word FileMaker. That would be really stupid. As much as I like certain consultants who are probably out there, there's a lot of branding that's associated with it. And the problem is that because I have a book and we have videos every day, for us to rebrand stuff it'd be a ton of money and a ton of effort. And of course, most of the consultants that sit around, they don't do too much PR work. They don't do much video work, nothing personal. But people who are watching this know what I'm talking about. Our main competitors, if they do 10 videos an entire year, that's a busy year for them. They've really killed it, right? For us, if we don't do 10 videos in a week, something's wrong, right? So there's a branding issue that goes on with the word FileMaker. Dealing with the word Pro would be a little more negotiable. You could rename the product this and that and the other thing, but they're trying to figure it out, and they haven't really communicated that, and so we really don't know what they're doing. And when they do ship it, we will be greatly unprepared to provide training on it because we won't know what the hell is going on. So that's kind of the downside of that. So the word FileMaker is kind of etched. And then, of course, other people go, people think FileMaker is old. Listen, they've thought FileMaker is old since 1995. Okay, let me help out everyone there. So the terminology is FileMaker. Oh, it's old. It's still, I like it. It's still a flat file system. Hasn't been a flat file database since, 92 or 90, whenever whenever FileMaker 3 came out, it became a relational system. So yes, the question is it's April 1st, and none of this is April Fool's Day so far. It's all like legit, straight up true. So 19.2.2, Jacob Taylor, do you want to start us off here and talk about this a little bit?
Sure. So one of the first, all right, just a tiny bit of background on this. So I think Richard mentioned earlier, they're going to this more agile release cycle. What that means is we're going to get more of these. So as you can tell, I have like 7 tabs open right here, and it's because I pulled a bunch of their other stuff up. You can go look at at this point, you can go look at the individual change logs for example, the previous version, which was 19.2.1. We'll talk about 19.2.2 today, which it's not actually a huge set of changes, but there's some, we'll say, some sharp edges resolved and stuff like that. And so one of the neat things about that is actually basically unlike what I have seen in FileMaker. I don't know if they're really covering every single little detailed change that they make in the product with these kind of release notes, releases, whatever. But I'll just say I want to point out and thank Claris somewhat for, in certain ways increasing their communication with the public, because we're getting individual point release notes, basically. I think that's actually interesting and valuable. It's a bit of a change from how it was even just when I was hired.
Yeah, let me just add to this. I think that they fix if people knew the number of known bugs in the product, normally it's well over 100 known bugs, and they typically skim off the top most obvious ones. If we just to make the point, if you scroll down, Jacob, you'll get to this area. Where about there saying
this one?
Yeah,
yep.
Yeah. These are like so what they do is they will tell us about the bugs that are really high traffic. It's like if if you had like in state of California, there's the governor of California. They're trying to recall the governor, and that's just a fact. That's not me politically saying one thing or the other. It's just a fact. So if you want to talk about the governor of California, you could not mention them without mentioning that issue. So these are issues that Claris, they're like well known to the public or to the development community, and so Claris will identify these as things they specifically fix. That makes sense what I'm saying? However, I think there's a whole litany of items that are maybe not nearly as well known, right? And may kill, if they have 100 backlogged items or 200 backlogged items, they might kill 30 or 40 of them, and then you might not even know about it. They're just gone, right? And magically they're fixed.
Yep.
That happens all the time. So they're not going to document every little thing, just the ones that they expect that you probably, if you haven't been totally asleep, you've noticed it. Like in the script workspace, it chops off the titles and stuff. That was like a hideous bug. It's only been there for like almost a year, right? It's been there since they shipped 19 initially. So anyway, so Jacob, not to detract us from that, but these are the bugs that they have elected to tell us about, not necessarily a complete list.
Yep. I actually like that. The one you just put your mouse over it down here at the bottom. This was good. We had a couple customers that reached out about that, where they updated to 19, and there wasn't anything else wrong with the solution. Some of the layouts looked different on Mac, and they were like the colors were wrong and stuff.
Yep. So, not to distract us, but so in the README will be the high traffic or the well-known bugs that they've killed. Right. And what else do they cover? They cover like new features to some degree, right?
Yeah. So there's a few. So they have like 3 sections in each of these. So there's new stuff, change stuff, and like top shelf bugs that we fixed and stuff like that. The new features on this one are actually kind of interesting. So there's a couple of these that like the top one actually matters. Might matter greatly if you're in if you're doing OAuth login to your database, or you are using Microsoft Active Directory for your login stuff, using those as your login providers instead of having it individually programmed in the database. So they have an option now where basically they're kind of stating this differently. It's just because the default has changed, and so they're hiding. They just assume that if you're trying to log in, like you already know what you're trying to do, so they don't need to display the username and password fields and all that stuff because you've set it up with OAuth or AD or your Active Directory system, and so they're taking away that option. So I think that's a nice little cleanup on the interface. I also immediately, as soon as this was published, had someone reach out to me and say that this was going to break their workflow because they actually use that username and password in the background to log into their thing because there's some local issues basically with their own login system and stuff for historic reasons basically. But like if they update to 19.2.2, it sounded like they weren't going to be able to get into their database anymore, which is could be a problem, basically.
Right. So a little more backstory on this because I was talking to some of the other senior CEO type people in the community. So the backstory on this a little bit. So you can so what Claris did is they changed the default behavior, right? And it says by default. So if you if you can still get into the file somehow, some way with some username and password, you can go to file, you can go to the file options menu and check a checkbox that restores this behavior, okay? That being said, right, the default, several of the consultancies said, oh my God, this is going to tip over a bunch of customer stuff, right? And there it is right there. There's a checkbox. I hadn't actually seen that yet, but I talked to them and they were pissed. They want that to be off by default, not on by default. Claris may have had a reason for it. Once again, not great communication. We don't really know if they just decide to arbitrarily throw that out there. But they didn't consult at least people that I know about, pretty big hitters in the FileMaker community. And as a result of that, they you might have to use an the issue was the customer didn't have an administrative admin code to the file for whatever reason. That's a business process that maybe you don't trust the customer with it, but the customer doesn't have the admin. You have to use the admin password to get in to fix this issue, right? And so if the customer doesn't have the admin password, then you as a developer have to log into all your customers and to manually fix this. Now, if you have 2 customers this affects, quit your business, deal with it. But for example, I was talking to Codence very loosely, and they said that, what if we had, 1,000 customers? They don't have 1,000 customers, but in the event they had 1,000 customers, then what would that look like, right? And they said, yeah, it could be a lot of work, and I got it, right? So, yeah, so it's kind of an interesting scenario. It's just happened a couple times lately with Claris where they force feed you, right? It's like when you got your, if you've ever had a kid, baby before, you're trying to feed your 8-month-old or, 12-month-old or whatever it is, and you got baby food and you're trying to feed it to them. About a year-old kid, and you're trying to baby food it, and they put the spoon in, they spit it back out, and you put the spoon and fit it back out. You're trying to force feed your child a specific new default setting, and your child's pretty much used to feeding themselves, right?
So yeah, so the next new things that they have, so they've added a few new functions for Addon developers, which I think was originally why we wanted maybe Christian on this stream, because he's stoked about add-ons and has built Wolfpack.
Yeah. So let me help here. So Christian, for those of you who know the add-on, the Wolfpack guy, he goes, dude, there's gold coins in FileMaker, and I can rest assured that there are gold coins in the FileMaker this new release. They are hidden. If you read these things and you don't, you're like, whatever. But it's actually for an intermediate to advanced developer, these are gold coins. So we're going to have a very specific gold coin webinar, in 2 weeks? I keep saying next week, but it's not next week, it's a week after, right? And so we're going to explore this very specifically, but we went out and got, because these are actually the gold coins that you can dig up with FileMaker 19.2.2.
I can, of these that I'm looking at, like, the first 2 seem really cool. The layout object UUID is what's going to be just excellent.
And Christian's going to demo this for everyone. So
yeah,
Christian's going to demo that and what the implications are for that. I'm sure Kaya will whip something out and distract everyone here in about 2 seconds by doing a demo for everyone and trying to show it to us. So if he doesn't, I would be disappointed. So then he got a new function for basically Charles Schmidt and Jesse Barnum, who make plugins. Christian Schmidt. I know a Charles Schmidt too, so I know 2 different people with the same name. Christian, is this useful for you? Is this something you're going to use, think about, not really useful? Feel free to let us know what you think about that.
Nice.
Oh yeah, check it out. And so that brings back a JSON
So you've got a API version 1, a plugins, and then each plugin in the array is its own thing. I've got 3 of these. And so you've got your description, where the plugin is on your hard drive, and some kind of an internal ID, it looks like. The version, which actually will be super useful because then you can do, that'll be a select way to do version checks.
And Christian just pointed out a very interesting thing here. He pointed out that this is more useful, not so much for him, but for users who actively manage and monitor what plugins their users are using. Because, because if you think about it, right, because it's telling you the version, all this kind of stuff, what's going on with it. And so if you run an organization where you're very anal about what plugins could be in there, and if there's other plugins or missing a plugin or whatever, it gives you some pretty good detail for that. So That's
the big difference. This one only gives you 3 pieces of information, basically.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, and it gives it to you as a what I count.
This is like the old one or the existing one.
Yeah, that's been around for a while, right? So the other one is
cool.
much beefier, right? So cool. Installed. Yeah, look at that. Much better.
You get all that stuff.
Much more organized. Sweet. Yeah. Cool. All right, cool. Good stuff. So let's go back to our README. What other README action do we have in here?
So there's that one. For more information, there's help. So this is, they've done some more bug fixes to this. I don't know if any of you have played around with this, they call it the quick start experience. I don't know. I actually don't know what Richard thinks about this.
We are going to do some webinar. We're going to do a webinar and talk about this.
Are we going to do something about that?
We're going to do something about it. But I mean, this is.
I think it's interesting. It's like, to me, it looks like the Legos version of FileMaker Pro. I almost want to demo it really quick. It's a drag and drop.
You can go ahead and do that. What this basically is. Of course, no one down there was alive at the time that they did Bento, but this is basically online Bento is what this is. So check this out. So it's like, what was Bento great at? Drag and drop, and people who needed really basic crap, really inexpensive. They love this, right? They love Bento, and they were heartbroken. So here you go. Here's your quick start experience. So here we are, everyone. So we're on a web. Hit OK.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's supposed to be in a web browser. Hit OK for that.
And then we have.
Yeah, we're not in FileMaker, right? We're in a browser, correct? Are we in FileMaker still?
No, this is FileMaker. It's very weird. So do you see the water wings are too big for my screen? Is what it does.
Yeah.
So that's how that's. You see the lines like.
So the idea is that it auto aligns everything. It tries to keep you from making a really ugly file, right? And just like, oh, I need this field, and I need this field, and this field, and then suddenly you got fields everywhere, and it looks like dirt, right? Really bad interface. So as you keep doing things, you can define new fields, put them in here, and then more seamlessly host them, right? And you can define that you have one column, a grid, or two, and insert these things, right? But basically, this is their no code. So we haven't talked about the conversation. We haven't talked about the conversation yet with here,
Sorry,
but we're gonna have the conversation about. Hang on one second, I lost my screen here. We're gonna have the there we go. We're gonna have a conversation about low code, no code, low code, and pro code, and this is their kind of entry into the no code market. The FileMaker product has always been low code to pro code, right? If you need low code, it does it. If you need pro code, you do it. It's never been no code because you can't do too much real work with no code, right? We don't have artificial intelligence. It's not like there was this Star Trek episode years ago, and they said, computer, create a database that coordinates the stuff that we know with the stuff that like the Kardashians, some other race of people knows, and the data, and so she's talking to Siri, and Siri goes back on the thing. It'll take me 4 hours to assemble this database. That in 200 years or 300 years or whatever is how databases will be made. You'll just say it, but for the time being, the computers aren't that smart. And assuming we get that far and the computers haven't revolted against us and tried to kill us, right? Kind of a dangerous concept. If the computer's smart enough to build a database for us is probably smart enough to know that humans are really stupid, and they'd probably be better off without them. So I just always worry about that, right? But yes, so here's the experience. You build it. Here's the file. So it's pretty great for like no code, except that right about now you say, well, I want to make I want to make a PDF, and I want it to go here, and then I want to CC me on this, and I want to do this and that, and suddenly you've instantly exploded beyond the no-code world, at least into a low-code / Megan code level, right? Megan, right? So, so yeah, so it's essentially a browser. It's a Monkey Bread, Schmidt saying it's a web server on port 9889, which is fine. It's basically they built a web browser. They're building this. Listen, if Claire's could take the entire product line endlessly and put it on a web browser, they would do it, right? But so far they're just drag and dropping objects on a layout. It's about as far as they can get with it. Notice it's not Windows, because to do it for Windows, they don't even want to bother with that until they get their Chromium Edge stuff going, right? Right? That new web viewer backend.
Yeah, right? I wouldn't recommend them trying it before that.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, for most deployed Windows systems right now, they're still going to be running IE, unfortunately. Microsoft said that they were going to get Edgeum, we call it, out as the default and built into Windows 10, I think last fall. I don't know if they actually pulled that off or not, and you still have to go back and then say, well, let me call that function or whatever, relink the stuff under the hood. So I don't know if it's a separate sort of, for me, it's a separate sort of conversation as to whether or not Claris will be successful with this, if they'll pull off the tech end of it. If they do that, then if they bring it into the market and the market even cares about this concept. Right. Those are all like places this thing
we're off in the weeds, but that's kind of what happens at these broadcasts frequently. We wander off. So
the thing is I look at that and I think that I actually think that this is the correct. We'll see if they pull it off again, but I think it's the correct direction in the sense that everything is going into the browser, and if they, just in a 100% no, there's no editing in the browser. You have to have this professional software that runs on your computer. They want to address that greater market of people who are used to literally editing whole websites in the browser, because you can do that in Chrome now. There's tooling for it, for example. Yeah. They literally have things like web resource file management stuff in the developer tools built inside the browser now. And so if we can get something a little, basically the only requirement is an up-to-date browser and a big screen, or something like that in a web browser for FileMaker. I said it in Discord, I honestly think if they can get half of the Pro Tools in, maybe I'm going to be pissed about which half they pick, but whatever. If they can get that into something like this and get it in we'll just call it generally available, I think that's really neat. I don't know if it'll go anywhere. Again, that kind of stuff is kind of up in the air, but I think conceptually this is really cool, and could be a direction the product goes to, where you could, Christian mentioned something about editing a layout on a FileMaker server or something like that. I would dream even slightly bigger than that, which is starting new projects, adding new modules, developing things maybe slightly simpler than the full tooling, but developing things from scratch just by popping a web browser open to your server would be really neat. Really, really neat.
Yep. Yep. So it's what they call preview software. We talk about this in the book a little bit, but it's preview means that it's not baked. It will change. They expect it to change, and so don't hang your hat on it once again. All right, so what's next on our list of things that we're looking at?
And then, so we have a list of enhancements, but this is also associated with this quick start experience. This is probably the big one. The preview is now supported in all of FileMaker Pro's languages, which is great. So if you natively speak some other language than English, there's now some chance that the interface might be in the language that you speak primarily. So I think that's slick. Actually, Christian in Discord pulled out an excellent note, which, because it wasn't true before. So in 19.2.1, and forget if that was when they I think that might have been, or it was 19.1 when they actually introduced it. But with the quick start experience, once you had like bailed out of the quick start experience, you couldn't ever really get back into it. And that's not true anymore. It is kind of true if you go and use the Pro Tools. I think that's an irreversible thing, in that it spits out another copy of the database or something for you, and then you're working on that new one. But you can now basically as I actually did earlier, re-enter the quick start thing multiple times to make additional edits and add a field or new layouts or whatever you're going to do. So, and that's nice, I guess.
Yep.
It's not just, oh, doors closed, bye, done.
Well, they keep expanding it, right, which is great. So that's good. So that, I mean, we're going to see this expansion over a period of time. It's just I just don't know how long that's going to take. So there we go. So
I see what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I understand. Sorry. That's just I see their development mechanism here. So they put it out the first time in English with a bunch of asterisks on what it can do.
On
they
Mac
resolved
only.
the English part. Yeah. And even it only could do 3 things and drag fields or whatever.
Yeah.
And now they're adding new tools, and the new tools are only in English.
Yep.
And so probably the next revision of this, those get languages and then additional English only tools. And
it's their agile development method, which is fine. This is great. I mean, one of the things that Claire's was trying to do with this is bring in new customers, and I'm all for that. There was an SSL change or a security vulnerability. I don't know if that's a real thing or not. Is that a real thing?
Yeah, they are. Basically, FileMaker Pro, like the way that it does secure communication is the same way every other, I swear, thing on the internet does, which is it uses OpenSSL. And there have been a bunch of interesting security fixes made recently to OpenSSL where, things could, send you specially crafted bits of data that blow up your computer and, I don't know, sell your children or something, do horrible things to you. And so those things are getting patched, actually. There's been excellent investment in that. But like every software author on the face of the planet that uses OpenSSL in some way, like if you're including it within your own software application, not using an operating system installed one or something like that, you got to ship new versions. And so they updated this. I actually think that's kind of interesting because the last time that they noted that they were doing an OpenSSL update, that was at the same time that we had all those email breakages like a year and a half ago or 2 years ago.
Yep.
And it was just because there was some default setting in OpenSSL, I think, that changed basically. If you guys aren't familiar, so you have the built-in script steps for things like SMTP, email, stuff like that now. But like a lot of classic, older solutions basically started using that with FM insert from URL because you can use that. And that script step is just a big wrapper around curl, which is another thing that everybody on the whole internet uses. And it's like one dude. He's cool, but it's one dude. And it gets updates all the dang time. And so you'll update curl and OpenSSL at the same time usually. And like that update a couple of years ago broke a bunch of stuff where people had pre-built things like sending emails inside of FM insert from URL instead of doing it the actual script step that's like send an email via SMTP or whatever, the built-in one. So
Moki asked a question, and we have no visibility into that. So Moki says, do you think that the quick start thing will eventually lead to the CSS style sheets? Okay, well, there's already CSS style sheets that are under the hood in FileMaker. You just can't see them or use them for whatever reason. So I think that at some point, that's kind of what that is, except that you can't really see the code in a CSS. Well, you can see it. You can export and see the CSS. You can do that. It's already doable.
Yeah. But
I don't think you can load the CSS back in, which gets back to this whole conversation. Remember us talking about XML export, the new one that they're working on, which builds add-ons, but we talked about this about 10 days ago where it works, but it's only good for body parts, right? It's like beaming Star Trek. It's the transporter. You beam someone point A to point B. If you you materialize them or dematerialize them into little atoms and fly them through the air, and you rebuild them. You want perfect fidelity. Perfect fidelity is a word I like to use. Even in the book, we use that term to mean that when you beam the person back together, it's exactly identically the same, okay, without any variation. And so this capability, we can get the CSS out, the ability to beam it back together into a single file right now. Doesn't work with perfect fidelity. It breaks things, therefore it's not really turned on. However, that's how add-ons work. So add-ons are like an extra body part, right? In Star Trek, if you said beam me down, but it only took your right arm and left foot and your hair, right? That's what add-ons do. They're very valuable, but they're not the entire FileMaker file perfectly reproduced. But if they get to the point where you can do that and perfectly reproduce it, you could take the CSS out, you could tweak it and shoot it back in. You could do all sorts of very, very neat stuff. So very, very, very cool stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the stuff I was thinking about, like, and I don't know if I don't think you'd use it for this because it's like a silly use, but they're also working on, it's like an app patcher as well.
Right, that's the same technology. That's the same technology.
Yeah.
And it's the problem is that whole conversation has gone really quiet in the FileMaker community. Really, really quiet. And so it makes me wonder where that went.
Yeah. I mean, so that's what I was looking for over here, trying to figure out if I could find, because I played around with that a little bit.
I wouldn't do it right now on live TV because it's...
Oh no, yeah, I was just, if I had the stuff still up, I could show you guys like what, just not demonstrate anything because I didn't get that far, but show you what it all looks like. But it brings the CSS out and stuff like that. I think that's a silly use for that on it because it's small, but I think they're targeting that at bigger fixes than, the drop shadow on the button is wrong or whatever. But
well, yeah. The reality from the once again. So I talked to Claris about this. This is from the one thing that one only conversation I've had with them in the last year, is that the product management team is aware that the transporter does not provide perfect fidelity, therefore it's not done. They are working on it, but they're working on it by improving the add-on module capability, and then once add-on modules, I'm assuming, is like reasonably done, whatever that looks like, then they will roll all that technology back into the complete body transporter, not just the arm leg replication transporter, if that makes sense. Once again, it's an analogy. If Christian Schmidt has a better way of explaining it to Bunny and Megan, we will entertain that suggestion. Yeah. So what's the question? Okay. If Kyle's off in the weeds, I'm not going to entertain that because other people cannot see this conversation.
Moki was asking an unrelated question. Yeah. Oregon Dean had a good question. It's I suppose it's a server question. It's not FMP 1922, but he was asking about any word on Linux server updates in place.
Why don't we talk about the latest servers that are shipping right now? So why don't we just talk about that in general? Because they didn't ship a new server, right? They shipped just Pro.
They did not.
Right? Yep. So why don't you walk us through that?
I wanted to. So these are the changelogs for this. Let me post this in Discord at least so it can go around the various places. I'm not going to go over the changelogs because we don't need to do that right now. But so 19.2.1 I guess it's the second release now where we have support for Linux. The shipping version runs on CentOS 7. Which is kind of a derivative of Red Hat. And then there is, we'll say in testing, it's not released yet. I think they're building for Ubuntu as well, either as well or in replacement of. I'm not sure on the strategy overall, but it makes sense because there's been some cantankerous excitement with as far as how the updates and stuff like that are going to happen for CentOS. The very short versions, IBM bought Red Hat and decided they didn't want to do the big, write the check to support the giant community that was CentOS anymore. And so it's going a little more free and a little more real-time updates instead of it being kind of the whole name. What CentOS stands for is Community Enterprise Operating System. And so they're not going to do that basically anymore. It will be, high quality, but it's not going to be the old stable enterprise type thing that everyone was looking for.
Whenever you have a really good nonprofit or group of people that are building Discord's not exactly nonprofit, but they're like a fairly small organization, I take it. And then someone like Microsoft buys it. right? Anytime a big company buys a highly successful small company, you can just about take it to the bank that they're going to melt it, right? In a not good way, right? So, right? So IBM, we just have bought Red Hat. So anyone who loved the products of Red Hat basically can kiss your goodbye, right? So you're going to have to change gears.
Yeah.
And of course,
Well, and
that's promptly what happens, right? This has happened so many times.
And they're doubling down on Red Hat. Like, they bought it because they want to invest in it, but Red Hat is the one that actually charges people licensing fees, and you write Red Hat a nice check every month or year or whatever for support and stuff. And actually, it's excellent. And if you're a big company, like that's, and you're going to run stuff on Linux, it's a great deal. But there's everybody that doesn't want to pay those support fees, right? So they're like, well, it's community support if you use the free one, basically. And so they're not going to maintain it as like a full enterprise operating system with multiple versions in play, and they're not interested in doing that anymore, basically. And so,
well, they were never. It's IBM. They were never interested in doing that, right? I mean,
IBM isn't. Red Hat did it because it was their biggest like sales pipeline.
Right. It's like us doing the video training. Like if someone took over RCC, the first thing they're going to shoot is the daily live streams. Boom, because it's a money cost center, not a profit center, right? So there you go.
Yep.
Welcome to the world. I mean, it happened with JavaScript too. And then what? Who bought Sun? Someone bought Sun Solaris. They got bought out. That blew up the whole Java. And then Oracle, and then where everyone was using
Oracle,
the Java thing, and then promptly just the same thing, not JavaScript but Java, and just made a tyrannical mess out of it. And so as soon as a big company gets like this open source thing, and I'm not against people selling it to a big company making a buck, but just understand if you're dependent upon that and that big company buys it, once again, you're pretty much screwed. So on this release, this is the 19. So we had 19.2.2 for Pro, right? And then this is server. So what else did we have in here?
So for this one, we can go over some of the details. So this is an interesting one. I have to talk to clients about it a lot, because for people that use the web presentation engine, which is like the XML API and that kind of stuff, and WebDirect, Richard mentioned the Java licensing changes, so they don't ship Java with a Java runtime within the FileMaker server installer anymore. That was kind of Claris's solution for the licensing issue, and it's basically to kick it back to everybody and say, hey, go find your own. And so we tell people to use Corretto, but as everyone, if you've worked with this stuff at all, it used to be really kind of version sensitive. If you didn't install like the exact right Java runtime underneath the FileMaker server, it didn't go well, and that's why they used to include it in the installer.
Bunny wants to know what you're talking about. What the hell? What the hell's Credo? Is what he said. What's Credo?
Credo?
He's talking about Corretto, but you're
Corretto.
You're talking like a. You're talking here like everyone else is like a
Corretto.
triple ninja FileMaker developer, and they're in the hood, right?
There you go.
So why don't we help out?
There's the word that you want. Yeah, Corretto. So Corretto is Amazon's Java. It may be new to people. Java is a programming language that is it's a technical specification. So you could, I don't suppose, if you have enough money and time, sit down and build your own Java. And so there are competing versions. Basically, Oracle makes one of them. That's the one that everybody is familiar with. IBM has their own. Amazon has their own that is about the same as Oracle's. But there are others too. I think there's 4 or 5 of them that I've heard of in my lifetime. That are, each one is a different company, and they build it themselves, and they're more or less compliant with the specification, whatever. And so and so FileMaker has always had to use, historically anyway, they've had to use the Oracle runtime underneath it, and then it was always a very particular version. And I've actually noticed in later versions of FileMaker Server, it doesn't get quite as mad if you're off a couple versions, or if you have a patch version newer than the one, whatever, like, it doesn't matter as much. But what I wanted to call out here is they're actually, as of FileMaker Server 19.2, they are now officially recommending Java 11 over Java 8 for web presentation engine and WebDirect. So that gives them a few new things. There are new Java language tools and programming commands and stuff like that in there. But probably actually more importantly than that, there's a bunch of performance improvements in the kind of Java engine itself that runs the code FileMaker has written, or Claris has written. And so I have a suspicion that there's been some talk back and forth about potentially turning up some of the numbers that maybe WebDirect supports or stuff like that, just because it can more fully utilize the horsepower of the system a little bit better than older versions of Java can. And so I haven't seen those changes yet because they're only at the point where, yeah, you could now use Java 11 and it won't just break everything and light it on fire. And so that may be something that we'll see in the future. I don't know. I need to go dig into the testing stuff and see what's coming out. But
Yep. Good one. Yep. So you like 19.2.1 for a FileMaker server in terms of, like, we like to recommend people have stable places to land, right? Not just sketchy builds, right? I mean, Claris would always tell you every release is like fantastic, almost amazing. But let a release go out, talk to the people who are using it, and you could tell which ones are sketchy and which ones are like stable, like rocks, like. So.
Yep. I've not identified zero issues with 19.2, but blessedly few is a good place to be, I'll say. So there were a tiny bit of backstory. They introduced the new database engine record locking system that came out not with 19.0 but with 19.1, and there were some like crash type bugs reported on the forums with 19.1. I've not seen those same bugs reported on the forums in 19.2, so I'll just say they're fixed. And honestly, for some customers, it's totally random because it depends on how your solution is built, basically. But I'll just say if you have a somewhat older style database, actually the type of stuff that they're working on as far as performance goes basically targets those older solutions. It's stuff where your relationship graph is a little wilder than absolutely necessary. Those are the ones that benefit most from these changes, actually. And we're talking like, you're going to do like an invoicing process. It's got to crawl all over the file and pull all kinds of stuff together and spit little PDFs out or something like that. Those types of processes are multiple times faster. And the numbers that the consultancies and Claris were reporting were things in the range of 8 to 20 times faster. I just want to note, again, you shouldn't necessarily expect that, but there will be certain processes. If you go to 19.2, there will be certain processes, especially server-side ones, where when you fire them off, they will there will be a little more pep in the process than you're maybe expecting. Not all of them. Some of it's just, oh yeah, cool. Record access is a little faster. This is a little faster. That's a little better, whatever. But there's certain types of processes that benefit very, very, very significantly from these changes. And so we're basically the two places that we're still putting people is 18v4 for customers that explicitly want the version back. Basically they're super conservative about what version they want to be on, so that's where we're putting them. For basically everybody else, if they don't have a preference like that, we're putting them on 19.2 at this time. I've not had it cause any real chaos with customer solutions at this point. There's some weirdnesses that I personally have run into that I don't know, I need to get on somebody's email list or bother engineering at Claris and be like, can you work on this particularly? Because it's stuff that doesn't come up super often, but it is, it's often enough that if I've run into it multiple times on accident, I'm all over the place, but somebody else is going to hit it. So
absolutely. Well, it was funny because Claris was surprised that we had found some things that they were doing, and it's like, we're only, how many servers are we involved with? Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of servers, right? So
yeah, we have a couple. It's at least a couple hundred. I think our total number is like 240 something. Yeah. And then you want to take some off for various internal stuff and whatever, but it's in the range of we manage not manage directly, but keep an eye on
Right.
ballpark of 200 systems
Yeah.
right now.
So when Claris does something kind of slightly off kilter, and we've talked about this before, where they were kind of aggravated at the Cloud One people, so they decided to like delist them off the DNS entries and stuff. And it's like, what do you expect is going to happen when we have 240 data points? Our phone immediately, we had a dozen people instantly call us and going, hey. And then so when a dozen people call you, something is up. You want to hit the HTTP2, Jacob?
Yeah. Kind of because I ran into issues with it. It's one of those things that's a super non-obvious change. So it's not enabled. So HTTP2, if you guys know, you go to a web browser. So I can go to my website or something. You're HTTP whatever, Google, perfect. So that's how you do browser communication. That's how you're talking to the data API. It's how you talk to the XML API. All those little backend services that are in FileMaker Server. They're technically communicating over, previous to this version release, they're technically communicating over HTTP 1.1 is the old version, and then 2 is the new one. And there's a 3 in development, so whatever, Claris won't care about that for another year or two. But HTTP 2 is the one that they just introduced support for. So as you can see in the note here, you have to go manually turn it on if you're on a Mac server. If you're on Windows, this just like IIS supports that, and so when you do a server installation of FileMaker Server 19.2, it gets turned on. Great. What that lets you do that's different from before is in older versions, you send your request to the server. The server, considers life, the universe, and everything, and deigns to respond to it. And it's not actually much more complicated than that. There's an interesting system for maybe keeping a couple of requests, we'll say, up in the air at the same time. So if you're going to fetch multiple chunks of a web page or a JavaScript and a CSS or something, you can kind of request both of those at the same time, and the server will get back to you in some order. With HTTP2, you can actually request 8 things simultaneously, and the server is capable of responding to 8 things simultaneously. And so for anything where you're going to hammer the data API, for example, you could have a bunch of requests in flight at the same time. So that's cool. It might at some point end up being like a performance benefit for some of that stuff and for certain parts of people's processes. The thing that's actually kind of important that's not really noted here is all of the documents. So if you write an API integration for the XML API, the data API, your code, whatever code you're writing, if it's a library or insert from URL or whatever, if you're talking to those things directly, you're going to be pulling the HTTP headers out, because that is how both the data API and the XML API, at least historically, have returned their you log in and you get your token back, and that's you wave your little credential around, and you're like, hey, I'm good to go. I have a working login, and the server goes, okay, great. But you used to have to capture that off of the HTTP headers, which are there's like the body and then the header, and it's just like a FileMaker layout. You have a chunk of data down here and a chunk of data up there, and the chunk of data up there is metadata. It describes what this thing is, and then the data is the data, right? The body is that's your like whatever you're sending through to the other end.
So Moki's asking, so this would be a good for opening a FileMaker API for webhooks and such? ?
Yeah, it'll improve performance probably for things like that, actually. Not in all circumstances, but especially if you have like a lot of stuff going on at the same time, a bunch of requests in the pipeline simultaneously or something like that. It'll help in situations like that. The thing I want to note though is because historically you've had to pull, like they send the token back to you in one of those HTTP headers, and so you can just grab if you're in PHP or something else, you can say, hey, give me the header. And then you can say, hey, give me that header. And okay, cool. And then you have it. And so the value of this, FileMaker server, blah, blah, blah token that's your token. You send the token on subsequent requests. And that's how you say, I've already validated my login. We're good to go. You don't have to think about it twice. You have a 15-minute window that you can just keep doing stuff. HTTP2 made all the headers lowercase as a way of standardizing it, because it wasn't how those things were set up, capitalization, like any of that. None of it was standardized previously. It was just everyone does it the same way, and so it generally basically works, but it's totally random and not. There's nothing in HTTP 1.1 that actually standardizes that in any real sense. And so they said, well, for 2, we're going to make a decision about that. We're going to make them all lowercase. Wonderful. So the problem is most programming languages, the uppercase version of a text and the lowercase version of a text are not the same string. And so if you're trying to pull out that token because you're trying to log into your endpoint, that may break if you update your server to FileMaker Server 19.2, alongside all the other things that could break as a result of that. The removal of PHP and the removal of Java if you're going up enough versions that matters. And so it's just something basically to be aware of. If you're deep in the code like that, you may run into issues. And I found this in my own data API library because I tried to use it on a FileMaker Server 19.2 and I kept getting, can't find that header. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. What do you mean you can't find the header? And then I go and look at it and I have it spit the headers out. And well, look at that. The header's right there. And I looked at it a little more carefully and I went, wait, those are lowercase. And all of Claris's documentation for the entire 30-year history of the product is all uppercase or capitalized headers, which used to be fine and is no longer. So
And then so Jacob, any parting words of comments for us at all?
no, actually just what I put in Discord here, which is you should keep the Claris engineering blog bookmarked in your browser because they post stuff on it and don't tell anybody, and the only way that you know is that you go and look back at the page and it updates again. So
yeah, they're a funny operation. At least they're doing this. I like this. This was new about what, 18 months ago? When did they do the first one? About
this year basically.
Well,
they've updated it since. No, it started halfway through last year.
Yeah, halfway through last year. They're coming up on a full year of this, and it's really great, and that they're doing this because otherwise we'd have no idea.
They're putting out demos like this, which are really cool. So they have full code examples of like uploading a database to Cloud 2. I know probably most of the people on the stream don't actually use that, but I am hopeful. We'll see if they do it or not. I'm hopeful that they're going to bring some of that stuff to FileMaker Server actually, because there's a bunch of the stuff that's honestly awesome, but currently you can only use it on Cloud 2. So
okay, cool. All right, cool. Well, I do like the memes. It's awesome, the memes. I love the memes. They're great. Appreciate them. And then as we move forward, Ellen won't be around, so we'll need some other people to send us some memes. So do you have a blog that I could follow? Yeah. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, very good. I'm glad they did this because otherwise you wouldn't know about this stuff. So that's it for today. Tomorrow's kind of an open Q&A day. We'll see what happens. And anyone else wants to show up, I don't know, Jake, if you're around, if someone throws a server question, we could always make sure you're around to take that if you're working tomorrow. Okay? Maybe. So we'll have to check your schedule. So
yeah. I'll be open. Yeah, I should be open by stream tomorrow.
Cool. Good. So if anything pops up, people have a question, that would be great. Appreciate everyone. Have a good day. Thank you.
Guys just stepped up the whole way. Calm, cool, collected the quarterback. Great read, good patience. More importantly, great job up front protecting this quarterback to give you a chance. And that's all you can ask for.
Trying to rally down 10. 9:25 to go here in the fourth. Short motion by Amendola from the left. Brady takes the shotgun snap. Stands in, throws it left for Amendola. Reaches up and snacks a high throw and lands inside the 10. Rolling to the 9. Ball slightly behind him, but Danny makes the grab.